talk about using the futures wheels disaster.
All right, well, welcome to NerdFest 2014. I was sitting here thinking an actuary, a scientist, and an engineer go to a futures conference. I'm an engineer, so anyway, you fill in the punchline here. So let's put some slides up here. Future of emergency preparedness. I'm Jim Breaux. As I said, I'm an engineer. I'm also a graduate futurist this semester. I'll be working as an adjunct professor at U of H in teaching on energy and climate. I've spent the last several years of my career working in oil and gas, and I'm talking about emergency preparedness. As I'll let the irony soak in here.
Stay a little closer to the microphone.
Yes, thank you very much. I got a great segue from Laura, too, on the disaster business for Houston. Thank you. And Space City. Sure. Okay, so the project, we do a project for futures research and bring that to the Best of Houston. They look at several projects, and you'll notice that they go from really high quality all the way down to what I'm going to give you here. We use a lot of different methods for exploring the future at the University of Houston, and one of my favorites is the futures wheel. It's simple. It's also attributed to Jerome Glenn, 1971, which I think is so wonderful. You might even run into Jerome here. I looked at two different trends in my project based on different things that I found in my research. Let's back up here. Okay, so coastal population trends upward. And this is based on a National Oceanic report about increased coastal populations. And this is something that's happening. And with the futures wheel, I wanted to look at what the possibilities were and what the uncertainty is around this particular space. So you start with a simple statement in the middle: coastal population trends upward at the coasts. And I looked at these three pieces. More housing needed, political clout grows as the population comes up, and evacuation difficulty increases. So housing placement restrictions change traditional architecture. You know, that's something that's happening on the Gulf Coast and probably in New York as well, among other places. You take that first differentiation from more housing needs and what could possibly happen from there. Look at more high-rise concrete and steel structures, you know, on the coastal habitats, which we're seeing, and then mobile housing rising in popularity. When the Morganza spillway was open, I was really interested in watching the Louisianans drag their mobile homes out of that area. You know, it's a very mobile population. So, but housing costs will increase due to the new codes. And so what could happen based on that? Well, you could have housing inflation causing wage inflation, businesses being less profitable. Why are all these people moving to the coast? Jobs, okay. Better life. And maybe novel costs for housing would emerge, like Hawaii with the 99-year leases, something like that. So, from the political clout growing, I really should have picked a different word there, right? The imbalance in Congress relieves the impasse of the early 2000s, and maybe the political system begins to work. And I realize that's kind of editorial there, so I'm going to skip past that. New mega projects are funded on the project coasts to protect the coasts. I'm thinking about New York from Superstorm Sandy. I'm thinking about Hurricane Ike, you know, which was a very odd storm. Safford rating 3 storm that came in with a rating 5 flood. Houston Ship Channel, you know, we're talking right now about an Ike dike. You know, huge projects, billions of dollars, but you've got to have the politics and the clout to get that done. So something odd happened when everybody left New Orleans. And of course, you know, Mayor Nagin is not in office anymore. In fact, he has a new office. If you follow politics, it's a cell. So, but they allowed the people from New Orleans to vote from Houston, which I thought was a really interesting change for, you know, our political voting has always been associated with geography. So what if this is a trend, you know, that we suddenly become less geographically oriented for our politics. And so I came up with a few things that could happen from there. You could continue the political gridlock. You know, as your coastal versus your interior folks started fighting about the money that it cost to keep people at the coast. Also, you could actually change the system. This one's a little bit more of a wild card, you know, going to a parliamentary system for the United States. Private evacuation businesses form. You know, I'm playing off a little bit of the 99% business. You know, if you're rich and you want to get out of town quickly, you know, maybe you hire a private service that takes you out of town. And I thought, well, why not new technologies and high-speed evacuation? Because you want to evacuate people efficiently, and if it's a business, there's a driver. So, flipping through this, advanced shelter and evacuation logistics imposed. You know, there's some folks working on logistical allocation for people and resources using, you know, big data. And I think that could actually bring a few things, which you'll see on some of the next slides. But one of the things that could do is we might need new laws to force people into certain sheltering. You know, it's a big conversation in the emergency management community right now. Is, do I force people to go, or do I just have them write their social security number on their arm so I can identify them after the storm? And I think that with any kind of a new logistics or new law, you need to have some kind of audit. So you may have some fraud coming up. Implications. There's a nice slide. I did put a graphic there in case the white space is putting you to sleep. So the takeaway is possible simultaneous rise of stronger and more mobile housing. I thought that was an interesting bifurcation. Increase of political clout we talked about in the private evacuations forming. And then I want to look at groups that could be better off or worse off, you know, from these changes. Private evacuation companies for a new industry. I'm kind of thinking about, you know, all black, you know, special belts and stuff. Coastal businesses could get the labor forces they need to progress. You know, there are billions of dollars in manufacturing projects along the coast going up right now, and they need people, and they're putting them right in harm's way. Coastal politics could rise. Home manufacturers and builders would have more work, so you could have a building boom to improve shelters. You know. Groups that could be worse off, of course, coastal populations at higher levels would contain more quantities of vulnerable people. And that's something that's been noted in several. The United Nations has noted that, as well as the National Oceanic Administration. The existing labor force could see cost stagnation as new jobs are not in their same categories. Let's see, coastal politics could lead to corruption. I'm not talking specifically about Louisiana. Housing costs may increase in relation to evacuation fraud. You know, we've seen that with Los Lobos. Okay, futures wheel number 2. So there's a plan to improve storm prediction reliability. And for this one, I'm really looking a little bit at the backlash from this. You know, we really have very reliable plans. You know, I see a situation with more data, more computers, more sensors, more computing power. And so we start off with a futures wheel that looks like this. If we can predict storms better, maybe we'll have evacuation indecision increase. You know, these guys know what's going to happen. They told me it's going to happen, so I'm not going to leave, or I will leave. I also see new tech requiring new workers, new people to do the kind of work that it takes to run these computers, to develop the algorithms, to interpret the data. And then what about the businesses deciding to ban the coast? If I come to you and say, you know, we're going to get hit by a major storm every 2 years, it's cost your business this much, you know, at some point the board of directors says, you know, forget Texas, go somewhere else. Florida, oh my gosh. Okay, so, yeah, remember where you are. So here's a little bit more of the backlash. Disconnected cool effect, you know, drop out. I'm going to stay for the storm. And we actually saw a lot of that for Hurricane Ike in the Houston area. So here's an increase in sales of zombie apocalypse and survival gear for weather-related disasters. And exclusive social networks are rising around heavy weather areas. You know, I'm not a prepper, I'm a weatherer or something like that. Take a look at the social and psychological services engaged to sell trust. Now this is advertising, right? It's propaganda. We want to sell trust. You trust us. We'll tell you where to go. You just listen to us. You know, we're from the government. We're here to help. But also, I see emergency management heroes arising as social figures. Judge Ed Emmett in Houston became quite a hero after Hurricane Rita. Then radical weather anarchists organized. I'm not sure exactly where you go with this one, but that's the science fiction part, I guess. Is the radical weather anarchists. We're staying and you can't stop us, especially if there's a law. So property values plummet, perhaps from this plan to improve the storm predictability. Lower property values encourages storm tourists. Why wouldn't you go take a tour of a tornado? You get storm chasers. Why wouldn't that become a tourist industry? Massively concentrated coastal property ownership threatens the tax base. And so if I'm going to come down to your blighted area and buy some of your property, I'm not going to pay you as much taxes so that you can provide services to people who are leaving. Another possibility is long-distance transportation improves. We can't bring things into our coast, our ports become impossible, so maybe we have returned to the light and air airship. Or train-to-ship loading interfaces. I know there's some folks working on loading trains directly from ships, mechanically, robotically, if you will. I see a lot of future to that. New laws passed easing technology worker immigration. Right now it's a little difficult to get in the United States to work on technology, but if we're really pushing this new tech for our weather, we may need some folks. And then I really kind of walked off the edge of the platform on this one. Blending of cultures and gene pool offsets devastating storm casualties. Okay, this is systems thinking from a kind of a high level. If you think about the gene pool in the United States and pushing that forward, that's probably a 25 or 30 year time frame. Although people believe in love at first sight, right? Okay, good. Okay, immigrant technology workers become the new elite in their home countries. I see some systems working there as well. That could be a change just based on this reliability. So moving along, I have two buttons to push, and I keep forgetting which one. So universities amid the MOOC transition catch the STEM wave, and I think you're hearing about this on the radio, right? STEM wave, STEM wave, STEM wave. So perhaps a universally available education sparks a democratic revolution to stop climate change. Stepped out on that one, didn't I? But it's a possibility, if you start educating people, they start listening. And here's another word that's almost as hard as cloud. Meteorological science spawns discipline of weather-related systems engineers. And so I see a possibility for engineers specifically in this area for this particular technology. We're talking about a 1 trillion sensor world that has to be integrated into a pretty person standing in front of a map, explaining things to us. It's got a long way to go. All right, so the implications from this wheel. Meteorological science leads to the new discipline of engineers, improving ship-to-rail interface for loading to avoid or minimize weather exposure, get out fast. Immigration is a weather-related disaster futures issue. So right now, immigration is thought of by the emergency management discipline as being, I've got to be able to speak, 4 levels of Chinese or Vietnamese or whatever it is to get people evacuated from my area. I have people who are critically ill that I can't communicate with, and that's what they think. They think about immigration. However, there are a number of different issues that stem off of that as well. Groups that would be better off, university enrollment could increase, if they embrace these new technologies. The new storm tourism market, I think that's kind of an interesting one. I'm in Florida. A new industry in weather disaster survival gear. You're seeing bug out bags. You're talking about preppers on the news right now. It could be, I actually have several gallons of water in my house. Let's see. Groups that could be worse off. I'm going to skip down here a little bit. Current owners of property might see a decline in value. Insurance premiums might be unaffordable for property owners. What do you do with that? And some at-risk behavior, storm riders, might cause draconian laws to affect everyone else. And we've seen laws applied to one thing with their intention when they come out with the RICO law or something anyway that affects us in our different parts of our lives. Okay, and then the gift. So that's a great method. Futures Wheel is a great method. It took me places that I might not have been going, thinking things that I might not have been thinking. Talked about the emergency management heroes. I hadn't really thought about Judge Emmett that way, but just run from flood, hide from wind. It was a message that he put out very well. and became a hero in our community. Evacuation industry, something I hadn't picked up before. And then the politics. I think that flexible geography thing around politics, we might see some of that later on. And as my colleagues did, I had a provocative slide to evoke questions.